Hurricane-damaged boats are hitting auctions for $1, and people are rushing in like it's free money. But this isn't a clearance sale, it's a pressure valve. Insurers, marinas, auction houses, they're all trying to dump thousands of storm-hit vessels before the backlog explodes. And here's the scary part. Most buyers have no idea what they're stepping into. The twisted bulkheads, the salt-soaked wiring, the engines that run great, right up until they explode your budget. But not everyone loses. A tiny percentage of buyers are getting boats worth 50 grand for pennies because they know what to look for. The line between jackpot and money pit has never been thinner, and what you learn today might save or make you thousands. Why boats start at $1. Boats showing up at auction with an opening bid of $1 seem impossible until you look at the forces pushing them there. After the recent storms, liquidation sites such as Cooper Capital and Copart began listing vessels at that symbolic starting point. The listings are real. The photos are recent, and the bids begin lower than most people would believe. What looks like a bargain is actually the first signal that insurers and marinas are overwhelmed. When storage yards run out of space and claim payouts stack up, the fastest exit route is a $1 starting point that pushes the boat out into the market immediately. It gives the appearance of opportunity, but the underlying math is nothing close to cheap. A $1 listing usually means the insurer has already paid out the claim and wants the damaged vessel removed quickly. Every day it sits in a crowded yard, racks up storage fees, creates liability, and slows new claims from being processed. The $1 opening bid eliminates delay and pulls in anyone curious enough to click. That curiosity is what drives the early momentum of these auctions, and the companies running them rely on that traffic. What looks like a generous starting point is simply a way to move inventory under intense pressure. And the companies behind these listings are moving faster than anyone realizes these days. Now, the real question becomes why insurers are unloading boats with such urgency. How insurers decide a boat is done. Insurers decide whether a storm-hit boat lives or dies using a formula that rarely favors repair. After a major hurricane, adjusters compare the estimated restoration cost against the insured value. If the repairs exceed a set ratio, the vessel is declared a total loss. That ratio shifts slightly between companies, yet the pattern is consistent. And recent NOAA reports show how widespread the damage was after the last round of storms. With thousands of claims hitting at once, insurers cannot afford to chase uncertain repairs, especially when labor shortages and parts delays push estimates higher every week. Once the projected cost crosses the threshold, liquidation becomes the fastest and most predictable path. That is why so many boats appear at auction, even when the hull still shines. The numbers tell the story, not the appearance. When the insurer pays out the owner, the boat immediately becomes an expense. Storage fees grow daily, transport bills arrive quickly, and liability risk increases until the vessel is removed from the yard. Sending the boat to auction stops the financial bleed and transfers every remaining cost to the next party in line. It is a clean handoff for the insurer, but the opening bid hides the real math. But liquidation is not the real game here, because auctions have built an entire system around what happens next. That system pushes costs far faster than expected. The moment the insurer steps away, the auction house steps in with its own revenue engine. If this breakdown is helping you see the real numbers behind these $1 hurricane boats, make sure you like the video, subscribe for the next updates, and share your thoughts below. How auctions profit on $1 boats? An opening bid of $1 does not mean the auction house loses money. It means the auction house already knows where the profit will come from. Buyer premium sheets show that fees begin the moment someone places a winning bid, and they climb quickly. A $1 hammer price can still generate several hundred in premiums, documentation charges, and online processing fees before anyone arranges transport. The fine print on listings from major liquidation platforms makes this clear. Some add percentage-based fees on top of flat rates, and others include mandatory storage payments if the boat is not removed within a narrow time window. Transport charges add another layer. Moving a large vessel, even a short distance, can cost more than the opening bid many times over. These predictable streams allow auction houses to keep starting bids low while still earning steady revenue. The $1 starting point is not generosity. It is marketing, designed to draw eyes and increase the number of bidders. More bidders create momentum, and momentum increases final revenue even if the bid remains low. The real leverage comes from volume. When hundreds of storm-damaged boats flow through a platform in the same season, every fee compounds into a reliable business model. Even if a boat sells for $1, the fee stack makes the transaction profitable. And this is before anyone steps onto the deck. And before anyone approaches the vessel, the first real expenses have already begun waiting. Costs you pay before touching the boat. Before anyone evaluates a $1 boat, the first expenses arrive long before touching the deck. Yard access is never free, and travel lift operators charge fixed amounts just to raise a vessel high enough for inspection. Rate sheets from multiple marinas show average lift costs ranging from $450 to $700, depending on size and configuration. Those amounts apply regardless of whether the boat is purchased or rejected. Auctions know this and shift every preliminary cost onto the person trying to inspect the vessel. If a lift is required to view running gear, that bill becomes the responsibility of the individual making the attempt. If the marina requires liability coverage for on-site access, that cost is added as well. The opening bid may be $1, but the first touch often requires several hundred the moment the process begins. Some yards restrict access entirely, forcing the next party in line to bid based only on public photos. That uncertainty increases risk and adds pressure to move quickly, which is exactly what the auction system encourages. Once the winning bid is placed, transport deadlines begin immediately, and failure to remove the boat on time triggers daily storage fees. Those charges can exceed the initial bid in a single afternoon. The structure is designed to move inventory fast and shift responsibility faster, and none of this prepares anyone. What comes next is the reality of what storms actually do to the boat itself. Storm forces that crush value. Storm conditions apply forces that most recreational boats are never designed to handle, and those forces are the primary reason storm-damaged vessels lose such a large portion of their value. During a hurricane, impact loads strike from unpredictable angles, as debris, docks, and pilings collide with the hull. Surge torque twists the structure when water lifts the boat unevenly, forcing the hull to flex in ways that weaken long-term stability. Lateral strikes pound the cap, the bow pulpit, and the transition points between molded sections. Transcript details show clear evidence of these stresses: cracked pulpits, separated seams, and visible shifts where the cap no longer aligns with the hull. These failures are not cosmetic. They signal that the structure has already absorbed energy far beyond its design limits. When that happens, resale value can drop by 50 to 80%, even before internal inspection begins. The cost of correcting a stressed hull often exceeds the boat's finished market value, especially when repairs require grinding, wreckering, or realigning structural members. Buyers looking at a low opening bid rarely see the engineering consequences behind the listing. They see potential, but the underlying math rarely supports restoration. Each force leaves a measurable signature that surveyors can detect, and every one of those findings pushes repair estimates upward. And structure is only the beginning of the financial consequences that unfold after a storm. The first and most expensive failures. Electrical systems on storm-damaged boats fail sooner and cost more to rebuild than almost any other component because saltwater attacks them silently and relentlessly. Wiring harnesses wick moisture through insulation pathways, carrying salt deep into junction points that appear clean on the surface. AC panels exposed to even brief humidity spikes begin to corrode at breaker contacts, and once corrosion starts, it spreads through the network faster than most owners expect. Transcript notes describe discolored connections, compromised ducts, and evidence that moisture reached areas typically protected during normal conditions. This process, known as saltwater capillary creep, destroys reliability by allowing conductive residue to bridge circuits. When that happens, electrical faults become intermittent and extremely difficult to diagnose, meaning technicians must replace entire runs rather than attempt isolated repairs. Full rewiring often reaches beyond $20,000, because the work requires stripping interior panels, removing cabinetry, and rerouting looms through confined spaces. Even boats that appear mostly intact can hide electrical failures that only reveal themselves after load testing. The cost is driven not only by materials, but by labor hours, which multiply quickly as technicians trace hidden corrosion. Every affected component adds risk that a repaired system may still fail under operation. But the engine room can wreck a budget even faster once contamination reaches mechanical systems. Those failures carry their own timelines, and each delay compounds the total financial burden. And the engine room brings an entirely different category of storm-driven expense: engines and the real price of revival. Engine contamination is one of the most expensive outcomes of storm exposure because mechanical systems absorb damage in ways that remain hidden until operation. Diesel intrusion occurs when surge waters push contaminants through breather systems, saturating oil and compromising lubrication. Transcript notes mention diesel odors and a history of previous rebuilds, which signal that internal components may have endured prior stress. When water enters a combustion chamber, hydrolock can bend connecting rods, crack pistons, or distort cylinder walls. Even minor intrusion leaves behind residue that leads to internal rust, shortening lifespan significantly. Alignment shifts also occur when hull movement during the storm forces mounts to twist under uneven loads, creating vibration once engines are restarted. Rebuilding a marine diesel is rarely simple. Average costs range from $15,000 to $35,000 for each engine when machining, parts, and labor are included. Those numbers climb further when technicians discover collateral damage in transmissions, shafts, or couplings. A boat that starts after a storm does not guarantee survival. Many failures emerge only under operating temperature or sustained load. That uncertainty forces buyers to budget well beyond the purchase price, often without knowing how deep the repairs may go. And even if the engines survive, the internal structure may already be compromised and waiting to introduce its own repair demands. Each hidden weakness increases long-term risk and pushes total restoration costs upward. And the internal structure can introduce costs that exceed every mechanical repair combined. The hidden value killer. Interior structural separation is one of the most financially damaging forms of storm impact because it alters the geometry that keeps a boat rigid. Bulkheads carry load across the hull, and when those panels shift, twist, or break free, the vessel loses the internal framework that supports every other system. Transcript observations describe separated wall panels, displaced cabinetry, and cap movement where the upper structure no longer aligns with the hull. These failures reveal that forces strong enough to flex the hull have already exceeded the tolerances of the internal joinery. Correcting separation requires far more than cosmetic work. Technicians must remove interior sections, expose attachment points, and rebuild structural anchors with precise alignment. Each step multiplies labor hours, and costs escalate quickly because repairs often require dismantling areas that appear undamaged. Structural interior work regularly surpasses market value on older vessels, making restoration financially impractical even when the boat still presents well in photos. The challenge is compounded when hidden damage extends behind fixed furniture or beneath flooring, where moisture and stress can weaken secondary supports. Surveyors look for hairline cracks, irregular gaps, and witness marks that show how far components shifted. When these indicators appear, repair estimates grow uncertain, and uncertainty adds cost, which leads us to the people trying to fix these boats and what those efforts mean for long-term financial outcomes, as repairs demand precision and extensive. Now we move into the human and financial realities that follow these structural failures. The true price of structural repair. A storm-damaged boat selling for $1 is not always a disaster. In rare situations, someone ends up with a vessel that can be repaired for far less than the market expects. Those outcomes rely on a very narrow set of conditions. The boat must have avoided deep flooding, the hull must remain stable, and the mechanical systems must have stayed above the surge line. When a vessel meets those requirements, the restoration path becomes far more predictable. A freshwater-stored boat that suffered dock rash rather than immersion can sometimes return to service with new rail sections, minor fiberglass work, and interior cleaning. That combination creates a scenario where the final investment might land near $12,000, while the finished resale value sits closer to $50,000. These cases only happen when damage is surface level and the systems underneath remain intact. Buyers who succeed usually have access to lower-cost local labor or possess the skills to complete a portion of the work themselves. They also tend to identify issues early, avoiding the expensive surprises that sink most projects. Even then, the margin is thin. A single unexpected failure can erase the savings instantly. Yet these stories circulate because they are proof that, under the right circumstances, restoration can be financially viable. But for every fortunate outcome, many more run straight into hidden costs that grow quickly and relentlessly. The financial reality of system replacements. The more common path begins with optimism and ends with a long list of problems no one anticipated. A $1 purchase easily becomes a $40,000 mistake when hidden damage starts surfacing. Boats that appear mostly intact in auction photos often carry moisture inside wall cavities, behind bulkheads, or within the bilge spaces. That trapped moisture leads to mold blooms that require removal of interior panels, insulation, and finishes. Once the walls come down, technicians uncover wiring damage, soft coring, or compromised framing that was never visible in the listing. Mechanical trouble follows a similar pattern. A shaft slightly out of alignment will create vibration under load, and the repair requires hauling the boat, checking mounts, and correcting couplings. The cost rises with each layer of discovery. Insurance companies write these vessels off for a reason. The damage rarely follows a neat path. Titles marked as salvage can also reduce insurability or resale value, and many finance companies refuse to underwrite them at all. That leaves the owner with a boat that must be paid for entirely out of pocket, including slip fees, parts, and labor. A $1 project sounds manageable until the first invoices arrive, and those invoices rarely stop at one. Hidden damage becomes the factor that shifts the entire financial equation. And while owners struggle with these expanding costs, the repair yards handling the work are dealing with pressures of their own. If you want straightforward guidance that protects your money and filters out the noise, make sure you subscribe. Labor versus time. The budget trap. Repair yards operate under intense strain after a major storm. Hundreds of damaged boats arrive quickly, filling every available slip and overwhelming crews. That surge drives labor rates higher, not because of greed, but because demand outpaces capacity. Rates that once hovered near $85 per hour rise toward $130 as yards try to retain skilled workers. Parts delays add more time, and extended timelines increase storage charges and reduce scheduling flexibility. Every hour spent waiting is another hour billed. These pressures create an environment where small delays become costly setbacks. A simple inspection can require days of waiting, and any task that requires specialized technicians extends that wait even further. When multiple boats need the same parts, distribution bottlenecks form. Owners end up paying for the yard to move vessels around just to make room for new arrivals. None of these costs appear in the auction listing, yet all of them become part of the final bill. Storm seasons worsen these pressures by damaging service yards, shrinking availability, and driving regional rates upward. With limited capacity and rising demand, repair costs increase long before any work begins. And these rising costs do not stop at the yard gates, they ripple across the entire coastal economy. When restorations quietly go over budget. Coastal communities feel the long-term financial impact of storm-damaged fleets in ways that reach far beyond individual owners. When marinas lose docks, slips become limited, and rental rates rise. When insurers withdraw from regions with repeated losses, premiums climb for everyone who remains. Businesses that depend on steady boating activity, from haul-out yards to fuel docks, struggle when damaged vessels occupy space for months. As those facilities raise prices to offset their downtime, the increased cost spreads across the entire waterfront. Surveyors face overwhelming demand, lengthening wait times, and driving rates upward. Owners, trying to complete routine maintenance, suddenly compete with salvage projects, and scheduling becomes unpredictable. Even boaters who never consider buying a storm-damaged vessel feel the financial pressure. A limited number of available slips in a recovering marina can push monthly costs far beyond previous levels. Each piece of the system becomes more expensive because every business along the chain is absorbing its own losses. And with these pressures in place, the next section turns to the decisions that determine whether a $1 boat becomes a workable project or a long-term financial anchor. A step-by-step safety check before buying. The only way to know whether a $1 auction boat is financially safe is to follow a structured evaluation process that removes guesswork. It begins with documentation, the registration history, the previous owner record, the insurance payout description, and any environmental disclosure required after a storm. Each document must align. A missing page or mismatched date is a sign that the boat changed hands too quickly for a clean trail. Once the paperwork checks out, the next step is an independent survey that does not rely on auction notes or seller summaries. A comprehensive survey covers the hull, the deck, the stringers, the bulkheads, and the onboard systems. That report establishes whether the vessel has suffered structural distortion, system failure, or material delamination that cannot be seen from the dock. The process continues in the yard, where the boat must be hauled for a bottom inspection. This is where hidden costs reveal themselves. Grounding marks, crushed struts, bent shafts, and impact points that insurance adjusters often simplify into a single line on the payout sheet. A proper haul-out verifies whether the hull retained its original symmetry, or if the storm forces introduce stress that will spread over time. In addition to the visual inspection, buyers should verify serial numbers on mechanical components to confirm age and authenticity. When matched with maintenance logs, this prevents accidental purchase of a vessel with unknown engine lineage. Finally, establish a repair budget using verified yard rates, not estimates created at the auction. But even a perfect inspection cannot overcome certain deal breakers hidden in the paperwork itself. Red flags that mean walk away immediately. Some problems cannot be corrected with skill, labor, or money, and they appear in the paperwork long before the mechanic touches a wrench. The first critical red flag is a title pending notation. This often indicates an unresolved insurance dispute or an open claim that prevents clean transfer. In some states, a boat without a clear title cannot be registered, no matter how much work you invest. The next red flag is a lien that survived the total loss declaration. This occurs when lenders do not fully release the debt after a payout, leaving the obligation tied to the hull identification number. Auctions may list the item regardless, shifting legal risk directly onto the bidder. Another red flag is certificate of destruction labeling. This designation signals that the vessel is not legally eligible for return to navigable status. Even if the hull is physically restorable, the legal classification blocks future resale to anyone seeking normal registration. Salvage records also reveal repeated title transfers within short intervals, which can be a sign of unresolved damage or incomplete structural repair. These patterns indicate that every previous buyer abandoned the project after discovering deeper issues. And even if the documents are perfect, the broader salvage market is changing in ways that will shape future auction prices. Market shifts that will change future auction prices. Salvage auctions do not operate in isolation. They follow climate patterns, insurance withdrawals, and yard capacity limits. Hurricane frequency projections from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration show an upward trend in severe storm events along several coastal corridors. When more storms hit the same regions repeatedly, insurers respond with higher deductibles, rapid claim closures, and lower payout thresholds. This means more boats are written off early, even when the structural damage is moderate, because insurers prefer liquidation over complex repair authorizations. A second trend is shrinking yard capacity. After recent storm seasons, many repair yards reported being at or near full occupancy for months. When yards fill up, insurers accelerate the offload process, pushing vessels straight into auction channels. instead of waiting for assessments. This increases auction supply and forces prices downward at the entry level. However, more supply does not always guarantee better deals. Increased volume can attract institutional buyers who bid aggressively on restorable hulls for resale programs. All of this leads to one final question: is a $1 boat ever a smart move? Bargain or guaranteed money pit? The financial verdict depends on a single principle: the math must beat the market. A $1 starting bid is meaningless without paperwork clarity, structural stability, and a realistic repair budget based on verified yard rates. If the total cost of acquisition, hauling, inspection, and restoration exceeds the proven resale value of similar undamaged boats, the project is a money pit, regardless of emotional appeal or theoretical bargain. A $1 boat only becomes a real opportunity when three factors align: clean documentation, limited structural impact, and repair expenses that stay below the post-restoration market range for that model and year. When those conditions align, a buyer can secure a vessel priced far below normal entry levels, with room for practical use or future resale. When they do not, the project turns into a widening financial drain, driven by hidden defects and yard labor. The numbers, not optimism, determine viability, and new listings will appear as storm backlogs clear this season. If this opened your eyes to what's really happening with these $1 hurricane boats, hit that like button so more people see it before they get burned. Drop a comment and tell me, would you ever take a chance on a $1 salvage boat? Or is it a hard no? And if you want the deeper breakdowns, the hidden fees, the insider warnings, and the rare deals that actually make sense, make sure you subscribe.